Chapter 1. The Boy No One Sees. Elias Vere had perfected the geometry of shrinking. It wasn't something you learned from books. It wasn't taught. No one sat you down and said, "Here is how to disappear while still standing in the room." You learned it the way animals learned, which shadows kept them alive. Shoulders angled inward, chin lowered but not too low. Submission invited curiosity. Eye contact avoided but not dramatically. That invited challenge. Speak only when required. Move with the tide, never against it. 14 years old. And Elias already understood that existence had edges. And if you pressed too hard against them, something pushed back. Fourth period history was siege warfare. The classroom hummed with fluorescent lights that flickered at a frequency only a few people ever seemed to notice. Elias noticed. He always noticed. He noticed that one of the bulbs in the back right corner buzzed louder than the rest. He noticed that Mrs. Ketterly tapped her left index finger 3 times onto the podium before asking a question. He noticed the way Connor Hale's chair leaned back at a precise, arrogant angle, balanced on 2 legs like gravity had signed a contract with him. The room smelled faintly of dry erased ink and adolescent deodorant that wasn't quite winning its battle. Elias sat in the back row, wall behind him. No one could come from behind. That mattered more than people realized. Mrs. Ketterly was lecturing about medieval conquests, armies breaching walls, cities burning, the slow starvation of sieges. Power, she said, writing the word on the board in blue marker, is about control of resources. Elias stared at the word. Power. He imagined it as something tangible, something you could hold, something you could trade. Connor Hale twisted around in his chair with the lazy confidence of someone who had never had to measure his movements. "Hey," Connor whispered. Elias didn't respond. He had tried responding once in 7th grade. It had not gone well. Connor flicked a folded paper triangle. It hit Elias just behind the ear. A sharp little sting, then fell onto his desk. Laughter bloomed beside him. Soft, controlled, the kind designed not to attract the teacher's attention. "Graveyard," Connor murmured. "You fall asleep in coffins too, or just class?" More laughter. Elias kept his eyes on the board. He imagined Connor's voice cutting off mid-sentence. Not violently, just stopping, like someone had unplugged him. The thought came so easily it startled him. He pressed his fingertips into his palm until the sting grounded him. He wasn't violent, he wasn't cruel. He didn't want anyone hurt. He just wanted quiet. He just wanted it to stop. Mrs. Ketterly turned suddenly. Connor faced forward instantly. Model student. Elias wondered what that must feel like. To exist without calculation. To speak without pre-measuring consequences. The bell rang. Chairs scraped. Backpack zipped. The room erupted into motion. Elias remained seated. Rule 6 of invisibility: never move with the first wave. The first wave tramples, the second wave flows. He waited. When the aisle cleared enough, he stood, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. That's when he saw it, carved faintly into the wooden edge of his desk. A symbol. He leaned closer. A circle. Inside it, a crown, but not a royal crown. Not the kind with velvet and jewels. This one was thin, angular, sharp-tipped, almost skeletal. The carving was shallow but deliberate. He ran his thumb across it. The wood was warm. Not classroom warm, but body warm. He jerked his hand back. The sensation vanished instantly. He glanced around. No one was looking at him. No one ever was. He told himself someone had carved it weeks ago and he simply hadn't noticed. He was good at noticing things, but he wasn't perfect. Still, it felt new, and the warmth lingered in his mind long after it faded from his skin. The hallway outside was chaos in motion. Lockers slammed in staggered percussion. Voices collided. Shoes squeaked against tile. Elias stepped into the current of bodies. He kept his gaze slightly downward. Not submissive, just neutral. He felt it before he saw it. The glances, the ripple. Something had shifted. Connor brushed past him deliberately, shoulder clipping harder than necessary. "Don't forget your locker, Graveyard," Connor said casually. There was something in his tone, a suppressed grin. Elias's stomach tightened. He turned down the east corridor. Locker 317 sat halfway down. He saw the paint from 10 feet away. Black streaks dragged across gray metal, thick, uneven, some parts still glossy. The hallway noise seemed to stretch thin around him. Across the center, written in jagged white strokes, "Go back to hell." The letters weren't neat. They weren't spray-painted. They were brushed. Someone had taken time. Elias stopped in front of it. The smell hit him then. Fresh paint, sharp and chemical. Students slowed as they passed. A girl he didn't know covered her mouth to hide a smile. 2 freshmen whispered. Connor's voice drifted from behind him. "Guess the bus missed your stop." Laughter again. Elias stared at the word hell. The white paint over black metal seemed deeper than the other letters. Like the word had weight. He reached out without thinking. His fingers brushed the painted surface. The metal felt warm. Not from the hallway, from within. A subtle heat radiated beneath his palm. And then, a whisper. Not clear, not formed, just breath against the inside of his skull. A slow exhale. Elias yanked his hand back. His pulse thundered in his ears. The hallway noise rushed back in all at once. Connor laughed again and walked off. The bell rang. People moved. Elias stood alone. Go back to hell. The phrase didn't feel like an insult. It felt like instruction. That night, Elias did not do homework. He didn't turn on his computer. He didn't text anyone. Not that there was anyone to text. The house felt unusually still, older than usual. The Veer house had always had a subtle lean to it, as if tired from standing too long. The wooden floors creaked in familiar rhythms. The hallway light flickered twice before stabilizing. His grandmother used to say houses remembered things. "Walls keep secrets," she would whisper while stirring tea. "Wood remembers touch." She had died last winter. The attic had remained untouched since. Elias stood at the base of the attic ladder. He hadn't planned to go up there, but something was pulling at him. Not physically, internally, a pressure behind his ribs, a suggestion. He climbed. Each step groaned softly beneath his weight. The attic hatch resisted at first, swollen wood scraping against frame. Then it gave in. Dust drifted downward in slow spirals as he pushed it open. The smell enveloped him. Old paper, insulation, faint rust. The air was colder up here. He swung his legs onto the attic floor and stood slowly. Boxes lined the edges. Old photo albums. Holiday decorations. A cracked standing mirror leaned against one beam. And in the far corner, a rocking chair. It faced the center of the attic. It hadn't been there before. He was sure of it. The attic had been empty the last time he looked. He stepped forward slowly. The chair did not move, but he felt watched. Not from the chair. From beneath the floor, his eyes drifted downward. There, a circular rug, faded red, placed in the exact center of the room. His pulse quickened. He crossed to it. Kneeling, he gripped the edge and pulled. Dust burst into the air. Beneath it, a small door set into the floorboards. The wood darker than the surrounding planks. Carved into it, a circle, inside it, the same skeletal crown, the exact symbol from his desk. His breath slowed. The attic light flickered once. He reached out, placed his palm at the center of the carving. The wood pulsed. Warm. Alive. And somewhere beneath it, something answered. Chapter 2. Locker 317. The next day at school, something felt off. The hallway had never felt this narrow before. Elias had walked it hundreds of times. The east corridor, with its chipped beige tiles and flickering ceiling panels, its stale institutional air and gum-scarred lockers. He knew its rhythm, knew which lockers slammed harder, knew which students lingered too long by the vending machines. Today, the corridor felt compressed, as though the walls had shifted inward during the night, as though the building were inhaling. He didn't notice the paint first. He noticed the silence, not total silence. That would have been obvious. No, it was worse than that. The hallway was full of noise, but it felt distant, like he was hearing it through water. Voices stretched thin, laughter lagging half a second behind mouths that moved too quickly. His heart began beating harder, though he couldn't yet name why. Then he saw it. Locker 317. Black streaks carved down its surface like claw marks dragged through wet tar. The gray metal beneath was barely visible. Thick brushstrokes cut diagonally, uneven and aggressive. The paint pooled at the edges where gravity had tried to correct the violence. It looked less vandalized, more marked, and at the center, scrawled in jagged white, "Go back to hell." The word hell seemed wrong. The other letters were stark, flat. But that final word swallowed light. It wasn't glossy like fresh paint should be. It was matte, absorbent, as if depth had been brushed into it. Elias slowed his steps unconsciously. The crowd parted around him, though no one made room intentionally. Bodies seemed to angle just slightly away. Whispers flickered. Connor Hale leaned against a nearby locker, arms crossed, posture loose and effortless. "Morning, graveyard," Connor said, voice easy. "Looks like someone decorated." Laughter scattered like dropped coins. Elias didn't look at him. He couldn't. His gaze was fixed on the word, hell. Something inside his chest responded to it. Not fear, but recognition. The metal surface of the locker seemed to ripple faintly, just at the edges of his vision, like heat distortion rising from asphalt. When he blinked, it stilled. His breathing grew shallow. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, twice. For a fraction of a second, the hallway dimmed. And in that dimming, the paint shifted. Not physically, but spatially. The letters deepened. The black streaks became not strokes, but fractures. Hairline cracks, spiderwebbing outward from the word. He felt pressure behind his eyes, a pulling sensation. Like gravity had reoriented itself and was now tugging downward through the locker door. He took a step closer before realizing he'd moved. "Don't touch it," someone muttered behind him. The voice sounded distant, warped. Connor chuckled softly. "Careful. Might open a portal." The word portal echoed strangely in Elias's ears. Open. Portal. Open. Portal. The hallway noise dipped again, this time more noticeably, as if a blanket had been thrown over reality. Elias reached out. His fingers hovered inches from the painted surface. The air between his skin and the metal felt dense, thick, like pushing into unseen water. His pulse pounded harder. The fluorescent lights above him hummed louder, then quieter, then gone. The hallway dropped into shadow. Gasps erupted around him. Someone swore. But the darkness was not complete. It was red. A faint glow leaked from the letters, from the word, from hell. The paint was no longer flat. It had depth, impossible depth. The black was not black. It was absence, a wound in the shape of language. His hand moved on its own, his palm pressed flat against the metal. Heat, not surface warmth, interior heat, like touching the skin of something alive. And then the hallway vanished. Not physically, but perceptually. The lockers dissolved into vertical ribs of something organic. The tiled floor stretched downward into a depthless abyss. The ceiling peeled back into a sky not of blue, not of night, but of roiling void, streaked with veins of ember light. He stood alone before a gate. The gate was not metal, it was bone. Miles tall, spine curving upward into nothing. Beyond it, movement. Colossal silhouettes shifting behind layers of ash and storm. Something vast turned its attention. Not its body, its attention? And that was worse. A voice pressed against his mind. Not spoken, not heard, but felt. It was not a word. It was weight. A concept shaped like a throne, a crown, a key. And beneath it all, hunger, not for flesh. For entry. For breach. For continuation. The bone gate trembled. A crack formed down its center. Red light bled through. Elias tried to step back. There was no backward. The ground beneath him was not ground, but skin stretched over infinity. The presence leaned closer, not malicious, but curious. It examined him the way astronomers examine distant stars. Small, fragile, but significant. A spark flared in the center of the gate, shaped like a crown. The same thin skeletal crown carved into his desk, carved into the attic door, burning now against the horizon of oblivion. The presence pulsed again, this time with recognition. The word formed slowly, painfully inside his skull. Gate bearer. The syllables were not spoken. They were etched. The crack in the bone gate widened. Heat poured through. Then Elias gasped, and the hallway snapped back. Fluorescent lights flickered violently overhead before stabilizing. Students were shouting. What the hell was that? Power outage. My phone just... Connor stared at him now, confusion flickering through his usual confidence. The word on the locker was normal again. Flat. Paint. Ordinary vandalism. Except for one thing, Elias's palm. Where it had pressed against the metal, a mark remained. Faint. Red. Circular. Inside it, the outline of a crown. His heart hammered violently. The hallway felt too small. Too thin, like a cardboard set placed in front of something far larger. Connor forced a laugh. You okay, Graveyard? You look like you saw a ghost. Elias slowly lowered his hand. The mark pulsed once. Warm, alive. And somewhere, not far, not near, but adjacent, something vast shifted in anticipation. He swallowed hard. The phrase on the locker echoed in his mind again. Go back to hell. But now it sounded wrong. Not an insult, not an instruction, a warning. Because something had looked through him, and it hadn't wanted him to return. It had wanted him to open the door. The rest of the day moved in distorted fragments. Teachers spoke too slowly. Clock hands ticked too loudly. Every reflective surface seemed deeper than it should be. In the bathroom mirror, his reflection lagged by a fraction of a second. He tested it, turned his head quickly. It followed, but slightly late. When he lifted his marked hand, the crown shimmered faintly beneath the skin, and for an instant, his reflection smiled. He did not. He stumbled backward, heart racing. When he looked again, the mirror was normal. He told himself it was stress, lack of sleep, humiliation. Brains did strange things under pressure. That had to be it. It had to be. But beneath the rationalizations, something else stirred. A memory that wasn't a memory. A familiarity with that bone gate, with that vast, waiting presence. As though it had not been the first time he had stood before it. As though something ancient in his blood had stirred in recognition. That night, when he closed his eyes, he did not dream. He descended. Through ash, through heat, toward a throne made of absence. And above it, the hollow crown burned, waiting. Chapter 3. The chamber beneath the house. The attic did not creak, it listened. Elias stood motionless beneath the slanted beams, dust drifting through pale moonlight that slipped in through the narrow circular window at the far end. The rocking chair in the corner was still, too still, not abandoned, not forgotten, but waiting. The air felt denser than it had earlier, pressurized, like descending underwater without realizing how deep you'd gone. The rug lay half-folded at his knees. The small door beneath it pulsed faintly red through the carved sigil. The skeletal crown etched into the wood seemed deeper now than when he had first seen it. The grooves caught shadow in unnatural ways, as if the carving extended beyond the wood, beyond the floor, into something immeasurable below. His palm still bore the faint red mark from the locker. It burned slightly, not painfully, synchronously with the door. Pulse, pause, pulse, pause. Like a heartbeat shared between two distant organs. He swallowed. "This isn't real," he whispered. The addict did not disagree. He lowered his hand again to the carving. The moment his skin touched the center of the crown, the temperature dropped, not gradually, but instantly. His breath fogged. The attic boards groaned softly beneath him, not from weight, but from strain. The carving ignited with fiery intensity. Thin lines of ember light traced the sigil in a very precise order, spiraling outward from beneath his palm. The glow was not bright. It was deep, a color beyond red, beyond orange, a molten shade that seemed to swallow the air around it. The seam of the hidden door split open without sound. Darkness exhaled upward, not air but presence. It smelled faintly metallic, old, like rust in extinguished flame. The rocking chair creaked once behind him, but he did not turn around. He couldn't. The door opened up fully, revealing steps. Not wooden, but of stone, ancient and black. Polished smooth by something that had descended many times. The staircase did not angle downward normally. It curved too sharply to be natural, as if bending around a central void. No light reached the bottom for as far as the eye could see. He knew without understanding how that the staircase descended far deeper than the house's foundation could possibly allow. He knew that geometry had loosened its rules, as if it did not exist here. And something below was breathing. At school, earlier that day, Rowan Hale had not meant to watch him. She had only transferred 3 weeks ago. New school, new town, knew everything. She had already learned the rhythm of the place, who ruled the hallways, who avoided eye contact, who laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. Unfortunately, Connor Hale was her cousin, technically, distant enough that she didn't claim it openly, close enough that she recognized the look he wore when he'd done something cruel. That morning, she had seen the locker. She hadn't laughed. She had watched Elias instead. Watched the way he touched the painted word. Watched the lights flicker. Watched the air change. No one else seemed to notice how strange it had felt. But Rowan did. The air pressure had shifted. Her ears had popped slightly, like driving up a mountain too fast. Her phone had glitched at the exact moment Elias pressed his hand against the metal. For half a second, her screen had filled with static, and beneath the static, a symbol, a crown. Thin, sharp, and skeletal. Then it was gone. She hadn't told anyone, but she had written it down in her notebook during math class. Crown inside the circle. She didn't believe in superstition, but she believed in patterns, and Elias Veer had just become one. Back to the attic. Elias stared into the dark staircase. Every instinct screamed not to descend, but instinct felt thin tonight, like tissue paper over a furnace. He placed one foot onto the first stone step. It was warm, not surface warm, but warm at its core, as though something vast pulsed beneath it. The attic behind him dimmed and faded away. The rocking chair creaked again, slowly, rhythmically. He descended. The staircase curved impossibly, spiraling down in a tightening arc. The walls were not walls, they were smooth stone that seemed to ripple faintly, as if remembering heat. The deeper he went, the less the space resembled architecture. The air shifted, gravity thickened. His ears rang softly, growing louder with each step he took. It filled his head to the point that he thought it would explode. Then, he reached the bottom. There was no chamber. There was no floor. There was no boundary. The staircase ended in open expanse. A vast cavern stretched before him. except the word cavern was too small a word. It was not beneath the house, but it was beneath everything. The ceiling arched so high it disappeared into blackness, but stars flickered within it. Not reflections, not painted illusions, but actual stars. Constellations that shifted slowly, strangely, wrongly. At the center of the expanse stood a massive platform of obsidian stone. Upon it, a throne, not ornate, not gold, but made of bone, curved, spiked, carved from something that had once been colossal. Above it hovered the hollow crown. It was not solid, it was not light, but was both. Thin skeletal prongs encircled nothing, yet within that nothingness swirled galaxies of ember light. He felt immediately this was not hell. Hell was merely a province, a prefecture, a small part of it. This was older, pre-infernal, a root. The throne was empty, but the space was not. Something was watching, not from the throne, but from everywhere. The cavern walls pulsed faintly, revealing shapes within them. Titanic forms embedded in stone. Faces half-formed. Limbs curled inward, as if giants had been fossilized mid-scream. A voice fractured across the chamber. Not singular, layered, overlapping. Fragments screaming from everywhere, all in unison. When ash crowns bone, when gate drinks blood. The air trembled. The bearer shall... The voice broke apart into whispers too numerous to follow. Elias staggered forward, heart pounding. "What is this?" he screamed as his entire body felt like it was burning from his very soul. The cavern responded as the hollow crown flickered. Images flooded his mind, a sky splitting, cities collapsing inward like paper burned from the center. Seas boiling, death and fire enveloping his every vision. Figures kneeling before a crowned silhouette whose face was made of shadow. The prophecy resumed. "Break the chain, or forge it. Choice is wound. Wound is door." The words were incomplete, fragmented, like pieces of something too large to fit in language. He clutched his head. "Stop!" The cavern dimmed slightly, and the throne let out a soft, faded groan. And from the darkness beyond it, a shape shifted, colossal, unseen, but undeniably present. A single eye opened somewhere in the void. Not round, not natural, but geometric, layered with rings that rotated slowly within one another. It did not blink. It watched, and in that gaze, Elias felt something horrifying. Not hatred, not malice. Expectation. The prophecy's final fragment echoed faintly. The hollow crown remembers its heir. The mark on his palm burned white-hot with a sudden searing pain. He gasped, and the cavern collapsed and crumbled around him into darkness. And then he was back in the attic on his knees. The small floor door now fully open, but beneath it, no cosmic expanse. Only a small stone chamber barely 6 feet across. At its center, resting on a pedestal, the book, leather-bound, breathing faintly. Its cover bore the familiar sight of a skeletal crown. The rocking chair behind him was still again, silent, watching. He reached his hand for the book. The moment his fingers brushed the ancient leather cover, it opened itself. Pages flipped violently, though there was no wind. Symbols burned across parchment. And at the top of the first revealed page, written in ink darker than shadow, Gatebearer. Beneath it, the same fragmented prophecy he had heard below. Incomplete, scattered, waiting to be assembled. His name appeared beneath the final line, not written, but burned in a long time ago, as if it had always been there. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked, not attic wood, but house wood. Someone else was awake. And far away in her bedroom across town, Rowan Hale sat upright in bed, heart racing as if it were about to leap from her chest. Her notebook lay open on her desk. The crown she had drawn earlier that day now had an additional line she did not remember adding. The air opens what was buried. She stared at it, absolutely certain that she had not written those words. Chapter 4. The Book That Breathes. The chamber beneath the attic no longer stretched into impossible infinity. It was small again, contained stone walls, low ceiling, a single pedestal in the center, and the book. Elias knelt at the edge of the open doorway, staring down at it as though it might lunge. It did not look ancient in the way museum relics looked ancient. It looked preserved, too preserved. The leather binding was dark and taut, stretched over the cover with no visible stitching. It bore the skeletal crown pressed into it, not embossed, but sunken, as if the leather had grown around it. The pages shifted, not turning, but breathing, a faint inhale, then faint exhale. His mark pulsed in response. He descended the remaining steps slowly. The air inside the chamber was warmer than the attic, though there was no visible source of heat. The warmth seemed to emanate from the pedestal itself. The book lay closed now, waiting. He stepped closer. The prophecy echoed faintly in his mind. When ash crowns bone, when gate drinks blood, the bearer shall... The fragment stopped there, like it was waiting for him to finish it. He reached out. This time, the moment his fingers touched the cover, the chamber did not dissolve as it did once before. The book opened, gently, deliberately, like something waking from a deep sleep. The pages flipped until they settled halfway through. Ink shifted and swirled across the parchment, not appearing but rearranging, words sliding into place. Elias leaned closer. At the top of the page, the hollow crown cannot rest. Below it, in a much smaller script, read, "The gate is not a place. It is a bearer. The bearer is not a victim. He is a hinge. Where he turns, worlds part." His breath got caught in his own chest, choking him slightly. The words felt less like explanation and more like diagnosis. "I don't understand," he whispered. The chamber responded, not with echoes or tremors, with silence, the kind of quiet that invites speech. The temperature shifted slightly, and then a voice. Not the vast, layered one from before, not the cosmic weight pressing against reality. This one was contained, focused. It came from the book. Low, measured, calm. "You understand more than you think, Elias." His name spoken aloud in that space felt wrong. He stiffened but did not step back. The voice continued. "You have always understood power." The pages shifted again, revealing images sketched in dark ink. A classroom, a locker, paint dripping, a boy standing alone. His stomach twisted. "You do not crave violence," the voice said gently. "You crave balance." The words felt like validation. "You are not meant to be small." The ink shifted. A crown appeared on the page, not floating above a throne, hovering above a kneeling figure. The figure's face was obscured. "You feel it, don't you?" the voice murmured. "The imbalance." Images flickered again. Connor laughing. A hallway, the word hell. "You are not angry because they mock you," the voice continued. "You are angry because the world is misaligned." Elias swallowed. "That's not... It is." The interruption was not sharp, was certain. "You were marked before they painted your locker." The page shifted. The skeletal crown burned faintly on parchment. "You are not being pulled towards something, Elias." The ink darkened. "You are remembering." The word hit him like cold water. Remembering? A flicker of the bone gate flashed in his mind. The colossal eye, the throne, the prophecy. "You saw the chamber," the voice continued. "You heard the fragments." "Yes," he breathed. "And you were not destroyed." That was true. He had not been crushed. He had not been consumed. He had been recognized. The voice softened. "There are many who would fracture beneath that gaze." The ink shifted again. Now the page displayed a diagram. Circles intersecting, lines connecting them like veins. This world is thin, the voice said. It always has been, but it requires a hinge, a stabilizer. Elias frowned slightly. A gatekeeper? A gate-bearer, the voice corrected gently. He hesitated. Why me? The pause that followed was deliberate. Then it replied, because you listen. The chamber warmed slightly. You notice the hum of lights, the lag in reflections, the shift in air pressure. His pulse quickened. How do you... You are not invisible, Elias, the voice said. You are observant. The correction felt intimate, dangerously intimate. And the observant are chosen. The prophecy flickered again at the bottom of the page. The hollow crown remembers its heir. He stared at the word heir. I don't want a crown, he shouted. The voice did not laugh. It did not mock. It leaned closer. You do not want a crown of gold. The page darkened. You want order. The ink shifted into a new image. Connor Hale standing in the hallway. Frozen, silent. Not harmed, but still. At peace. The hallway calm. Students walking without fear. Balance. You want the noise to stop? Elias' jaw tightened. Yes. The voice lowered further. And I can help you. The air in the chamber seemed to pulse. Not through chaos. The page showed no fire, no screaming. Just correction, adjustment, realignment. You need not break the world, the voice said softly. You need only turn the hinge. The phrase settled in his chest like a key finding its lock. Turn the hinge. And what happens if I don't? He asked quietly. The page went still. Then new words formed slowly. The hinge turns. His breath faltered. By whom? The ink bled outward, then reassembled. By one less careful. The chamber trembled faintly. Not violently, but with restrained force. The implication hung heavy in the air. If not him, someone else. Someone worse? The voice spoke again. You have seen what waits. A colossal eye flashed in his memory. You were not crushed. No, he whispered. You were chosen. The word again. Chosen. The book's pages shifted to a new section. Marked, symbols and sigils. One in particular burned brighter than the rest. A small circle. Inside it, the skeletal crown, but this time beneath it, a second mark. A binding glyph. You are not alone in this, the voice said. Something moved at the edge of the chamber. The air rippled. From the shadow near the wall, smoke gathered. Not thick, not monstrous, contained. It coiled upward slowly, forming a silhouette. Tall, defined. Eyes like dim embers opening in the dark. The voice no longer came from the book. It came from the figure. My name, it said calmly, is Malthus. The name Malthus rang through Elias's head with a thunderous clap. The form solidified slightly. Not fully corporeal, but present enough to occupy space. No horns, no grotesque distortion. Only something ancient shaped into the outline of a man. You have already heard my kin, Malthus continued. They are loud. A faint flicker of something like amusement passed through his ember eyes. I am not. Elias did not flee, he should have. But the air did not feel hostile. It felt aligned. You're from there, Elias said quietly. Yeah. Malthus inclined his head slightly. But I am not the gate. His gaze flickered briefly to the book. I am the steward. The word landed carefully. I am bound to the hinge. Bound. The binding glyph beneath the crown glowed faintly. You're bound to me? Elias asked. Malthus's lips curved faintly. To the bearer. Not quite the same thing. Elias hesitated. You'll help me? Malthus stepped closer, though his feet never quite touched the stone. I will help you correct imbalance. The words were precise, careful. Your needs will be met. Elias felt a strange sense of relief bloom in his chest. Not power, but support. Understanding. Malthus's voice softened further. You will not be alone in this. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked faintly. The house was settling, or listening. Across town, Rowan Hale sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, notebook open before her. The crown symbol stared back from the page. She had drawn it as best she could from memory. But the more she looked at it, the more wrong it felt. It felt too precise, as if she has drawn it thousands of times before. Her phone lay beside her. She replayed the short video she had accidentally recorded in the hallway earlier. At first, it was just normal noise. Students, lockers, Connor's voice. Then, a flicker. The lights dimmed for a fraction of a second. In that dimness, the paint on the locker seemed to ripple. The word hell deepened unnaturally. And for a single frame, a shadow stood behind Elias. Tall, smoke-like. She paused the video, zoomed in. It was barely visible, but it was there. Her stomach tightened. She didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in evidence. And evidence was accumulating. She turned back to her notebook. Below the crown, she wrote carefully, "What is a gate-bearer?" She didn't know why she chose that word, but it felt correct. Beneath the house, Malthus stood before Elias, eyes made of ember, as steady as always. "You feel it already," he said quietly. "The world bending slightly." Elias nodded. Yes, he did. Not breaking, but adjusting. "Small corrections first," Malthus continued. "You need not ask for more." The book's pages shifted again. A new fragment of the prophecy revealed itself. "The bearer shall break the chain." The rest remained obscured. Malthus's gaze did not leave Elias. "You are not meant to serve the crown," he said softly. "You are meant to wear it." The chamber pulsed faintly in agreement. Elias did not notice how the word wear replaced another word that had once been written there. He only felt something unfamiliar growing inside him. Not rage, not fear, possibility. And above them, unseen beyond the ceiling of the world, something vast shifted in slow anticipation. The hinge had begun to turn. Chapter 5. Small Corrections. The morning arrived thin and colorless. Elias woke with the faint sensation that something had been watching him sleep, not from the room, but from beneath it. The mark on his palm no longer burned. It hummed. A steady warmth under the skin. He flexed his fingers slowly. The memory of the chamber beneath the attic lingered, but what haunted him more was the greater expanse beyond it. The impossible void, the bone throne, the hollow crown suspended over nothing. He had seen it, and it had not devoured him. That thought followed him to school. Connor was not the only one. He had theatrical cruelty. But there were smaller orbiting cruelties, too. The kind that filled in the quiet spaces. Tyler Mendel. Narrow shoulders, quick laugh. Always just close enough to Connor to borrow confidence. Tyler didn't shove Elias into lockers. He whispered just loud enough. He accidentally bumped his shoulder. He dropped comments in passing that seemed harmless until they weren't. That morning, Tyler leaned close as Elias opened his locker. "You know," Tyler murmured casually, "my mom says kids who talk to themselves usually end up in institutions." He grinned with that ugly, weasel-like face of his. "I'd keep an eye on that." He walked away before Elias could respond. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, but it stayed. Elias closed his locker slowly. The word hell had been cleaned off, but faint black streaks remained in the metal's grooves. The mark on his palm started to warm ever so slightly, and a voice slid into the edge of his thoughts. He seeks elevation by pushing you downward. Malthus, ever present, but unseen. Elias didn't look around. He didn't need to. I don't want him hurt, Elias thought carefully. There was a pause. Of course not, the demon said. The voice was warm, measured. You seek balance. Yes, then balance can be restored. It happened during third period science. Tyler raised his hand confidently to answer a question about chemical reactions. He smirked slightly as he spoke, loud enough for others to hear. Exothermic reactions release heat energy, he said. Mrs. Danner nodded. Correct. Tyler leaned back, satisfied. And then he froze. Not stiff, not violently. Just paused. His expression shifted from smug to confused. He blinked once. Twice. Mrs. Danner frowned. Tyler? He opened his mouth to speak again, but nothing came out. Not silence. Static. A faint crackling noise like a detuned radio. The class went quiet. Tyler's face flushed red. He swallowed hard and tried again. Still nothing but fractured noise. Panic crept into his eyes. Mrs. Danner moved closer. Are you all right? Tyler nodded quickly, though his expression screamed otherwise. After a moment, his voice returned, shaky, small. I don't know what happened. Snickers rose from the back of the room, the exact kind Tyler had once used on others. Elias sat still in his chair. He had not spoken. He had not moved. But he felt something shift, a subtle rebalancing. A whisper brushed through his mind. Minor misalignment corrected, he said under his breath. He did not feel guilt. He felt calm. Tyler avoided speaking for the rest of the period. He avoided eye contact with the rest of the class entirely. It wasn't punishment. It was perspective. And it had worked. Rowan had seen it. She wasn't in science class, but she noticed patterns. Tyler Mendel did not stutter. He did not freeze. Yet that morning, he had gone pale walking down the hallway, avoiding everyone's gaze. And Elias? Elias looked steadier, more grounded. She approached him during lunch. Not dramatically, but as an old friend would. Just sat down across from him at the far end of the cafeteria where he usually ate alone. He looked up surprised. Hi, she said simply. He hesitated. Hi, he finally said back with a confused voice. There was no mockery in her eyes, only curiosity. I'm Rowan. I know, Elias said. She smiled faintly. Good. Silence lingered for a moment, then she leaned slightly forward. Did the lights flicker yesterday, she asked carefully. Or was that just me? Elias stiffened. Lights flicker all the time. Not like that. She studied his face. You felt it too, didn't you? He didn't answer. But he didn't deny it either. Rowan nodded slowly. I don't think you're crazy, she said. The word hit him harder than Tyler's whisper had. She didn't laugh. She didn't press. She simply added, if something weird is happening, I'd like to know. Malthus's presence stirred faintly at the edge of Elias's awareness. She is observant. Yes, Elias thought back carefully. That makes her useful. The word landed wrong. Elias didn't like that. Rowan noticed the flicker in his expression. I'm not trying to pry, she said quickly. I just don't think that locker thing was normal. Neither did he. Maybe it was just a power surge, he muttered. Rowan studied him for another second, then nodded. Okay. She stood up and took a few steps. But before walking away, she added quietly, if it wasn't, you don't have to deal with it alone. Something tightened in Elias's chest. Not fear, not pressure, but something warmer. Malthus said nothing, but the chamber beneath the house pulsed faintly in response. That night, the book did not wait for him to open it. It called softly, not through sound, but through gravity. The air in his bedroom felt heavier near the floorboards. He descended to the attic again. The hidden chamber opened without resistance. The small stone room was as he had left it. But this time, when he stepped beyond the pedestal, the world dissolved again. Not violently, smoothly. The greater expanse revealed itself. And now, he could see more. The colossal shapes embedded in the cavern walls were not statues. They were living creatures, restrained, bound, their bodies stretched across miles of stone. Some had too many limbs, jointed in directions that defied anatomy. Others were vast serpentine forms coiled around pillars of bone. Eyes the size of buildings opened slowly as he appeared. Not all at once. One, then another. Their gazes were not hostile. They were patient. The cavern ceiling churned with distant star fields, but the stars moved like living organisms, clustering and separating in deliberate patterns. One of the bound titans shifted slightly. The movement rippled through the stone like tectonic stress. A low sound vibrated through the expanse. Not a roar, but a chant. Fragments of the prophecy echoed again. When ash crowns bone, when the hinge turns true, the choir shall wake. The line fractured before completion. Elias stepped forward carefully. He was not afraid. He felt acknowledged. The colossal eye in the void opened again. This time he noticed details. Within its rotating rings were smaller shapes, entire cities suspended in its pupil, crumbling and reforming endlessly. Malthus's voice entered beside him, no longer from the book, but standing at his shoulder in this cosmic place. "You see them now," Malthus said quietly. "They are older than hell." "What are they?" Elias whispered. "Witnesses," Malthus replied. "To what?" "To the turning." The hollow crown pulsed faintly above the throne. Elias felt the pull of it, not toward destruction, toward inevitability. "I don't want to destroy anything," he said quietly. Malthus regarded him calmly. "Then do not. Simple, clean. You need only guide." The word guide felt safer than it should have. Below the throne, the stone floor rippled. A faint crack formed across the expanse. Small, hairline, but spreading. Elias felt it. A subtle imbalance. "Something's wrong," he murmured. "Yes," Malthus agreed softly. "It has been wrong for a long time." The prophecy whispered again, clearer this time. "The bearer shall break the chain, or forge it anew." The second line lingered. Elias stared at the crack. "If I don't fix it," Malthus did not look at him. "The hinge turns." The same answer as before. But now Elias understood the implication. If he did nothing, something else would. And something else might not be as careful as he would be. The next day, Tyler avoided Elias. But Connor did not. Connor cornered him near the stairwell. You think that little stunt was funny?" Connor said quietly. Elias blinked. "What stunt?" Tyler stood behind Connor, pale. "You did something," Connor pressed. Elias felt Malthus stir. He sensed his imbalance. "I didn't do anything," Elias said truthfully. Connor stepped closer. "Stay out of Tyler's head." The accusation was absurd, but it hit too close. Malthus's voice slid in smoothly. "You may correct more directly." Elias' pulse quickened. "I don't want to hurt him," he thought. "Then do not." Connor shoved him lightly. Not enough to draw attention, just enough to assert dominance. The mark on Elias's palm warmed again. The air thickened slightly. Elias looked at Connor, really looked, and said quietly, "Leave me alone." The words felt heavier than they should have. The hallway lights flickered faintly. Connor blinked. For a split second, something passed behind his eyes. Not pain, perspective. A flash of himself. Alone in a room, voice gone, laughter absent. Connor stepped back, just half a step. But it was enough. "Whatever," he muttered. He walked away. Not triumphant, not mocking, but uncertain. Elias exhaled slowly. It hadn't been violence. It had been recalibration. Malthus's voice hummed softly with approval. You learn quickly. Elias felt something dangerous then. A sense of confidence. And somewhere beneath the house, beneath the chamber, beneath the throne, the colossal beings shifted in their bindings. Not in alarm, in anticipation. The hinge had moved again. Just a fraction, but fractions add up. Chapter 6. The Shape of Concern. The first change Elias made should have frightened him more than it did. It had been small, almost laughably small. Malthus had called it a correction. Elias called it a coincidence. A snapped locker hinge repaired before it fell. A teacher's temper cooled before it boiled. A missed bus that arrived late enough for him to catch it. Tiny bends in the fabric of the world, threads tugged into better alignment. And yet the air around him had begun to feel crowded. Not crowded with people, crowded with pressure. Rowan Hale noticed it before anyone else did. Rowan noticed everything. She watched Elias from across the cafeteria, chin resting in his palm, eyes narrowed. Not suspicious at first, but curious. Rowan's curiosity wasn't sharp. It wasn't accusatory. It was the quiet kind that sits beside you and asks why the shadows under your eyes look deeper than they did yesterday. Elias had begun eating alone again. He hadn't meant to. It just felt safer that way. When Darren Pike, a minor tyrant of hallway intersections and collector of humiliations, accidentally shoulder-checked Elias 2 days prior, Elias hadn't reacted. He had simply whispered under his breath. Correction. Malthus had answered like breath against his ear. You wish to be left alone? Yes, please, Elias said softly. Then he will look elsewhere. The next day, Darren's attention shifted. Not to Elias. To someone else. The teachers had called it a disciplinary cascade. Darren snapped at a substitute. Threw a book and pushed too far. He ended up suspended over it. Elias felt relief like cool water over burned skin, but that relief had weight. And Rowan had felt the tremor. That afternoon, Rowan cornered him by the science wing windows where the glass turned the world into a dim aquarium of gray light. You're different, Rowan said plainly. Elias forced a shrug. People change. Not overnight. Silence pooled between them. The fluorescent lights overhead hummed in a pitch too low to hear, yet too high to ignore. You look, Rowan tried again, softer. Like someone standing too close to a cliff. Elias's throat tightened, because that was exactly what it felt like. He could feel the cliff beneath his feet, the edge of something vast. The book in his bag pulsed faintly, warm against his spine like a living coal wrapped in leather. I'm fine, he said. Rowan studied him. You don't have to lie to protect people. Elias almost laughed. If only it were that simple. That night, the dreams came faster. He did not open the book. The book opened him. The cosmic expanse swallowed him without warning. No descent this time. No gentle slipping between layers of sleep. One moment he was in bed, staring at the ceiling. The next end, he stood on black glass. Not flesh this time, but black, almost obsidian-like glass, stretching infinitely in every direction, fractured by veins of molten starlight. Above him, no sky, only depth, an inescapable void of nothingness. The stars were no longer visible, or did not exist in this place anymore. Elias couldn't tell. Layer upon layer of impossible geometry, folding inward like a mind thinking too hard. The colossal beings drifted there. He saw them clearly now. Not shapes, not silhouettes, but actual beings. Titanic anatomies constructed from cathedral bones and planetary membranes. Spines that arched across the void like broken bridges. Faces half-formed and dissolving, eyes like eclipsed suns blinking in arrhythmic intervals. One creature uncoiled near him. Its body resembled a rib cage kilometers wide, each rib strung with membranes that shimmered with trapped galaxies. Within those membranes, he saw worlds in ruin, oceans evaporating, forests turning to ash and ember. It did not move with malice. It moved with inevitability. Malthus manifested beside him, not fully formed, but coalescing from smoke and embers. This time, Elias saw more of him. He was taller, crowned not in bone, but in suggestion, antlered shadows curving upward. His face shifted subtly, features rearranging in ways the eye could not track. "You return willingly," Malthus observed. "I didn't choose to," Elias said. "You always choose," said the demon. The colossal being above them exhaled. The exhale bent the very reality around them. Elias dropped to one knee as gravity reversed, then twisted, then ceased. The black glass beneath him cracked, not breaking him, but revealing something beneath. It was writing, the same script from the hidden chamber. It crawled across the surface like living veins. Malthus gestured. "This is where the prophecy fractures." "Fractures?" Elias whispered. "Prophecy is not a straight line. It is a wound, a fissure, a crack in the soul of the universe." The writing shifted. Elias could read more now. "The herald shall correct the fracture of men." The words blurred. "And in doing so?" Blurred again. "Why can't I see the rest?" Elias demanded. "Because cost is not knowledge," Malthus said smoothly. "It is experience." Elias looked up at the colossal beings. "Are they watching me?" "They are aware of deviation," Malthus said calmly. "Of me?" Elias whimpered. "Of change." The demon responded with a small grin on his face. The ribcage tightened, turned, slowly, impossibly, and Elias felt its attention sweep across him like a tidal wave of cold. For a moment he thought it saw him, truly saw him. He felt peeled open, examined, measured, and then dismissed. He exhaled shakily. "Why me?" he asked. Malthus knelt so they were eye level. "You are not chosen because you are special." Elias flinched. "You are chosen because you are capable." The distinction felt important and dangerous. Rowan began investigating quietly. She did not confront, she just observed. She checked the school records, the disciplinary reports, Darren's sudden behavioral collapse, 2 other minor incidents, subtle enough no one else connected them, all orbiting Elias. Then Rowan found the old archive room key, borrowed under the guise of a history project. The hidden chamber beneath the school wasn't difficult to locate once you knew where to look for architecture that didn't belong. The stonework was older than the school by centuries, the air colder. Rowan didn't go far, just enough to see the edge of the script carved into the walls, just enough to copy a fragment. Later, alone in her bedroom, Rowan translated it. "The herald shall walk between correction and collapse." Her hands trembled. She searched for more references. She found older folklore, names erased, rewritten, erased again. But one phrase repeated, "The crowned witness." Rowan thought of Elias, of the way he looked at nothing sometimes, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. And for the first time, Rowan felt fear, not of him, but for him. Elias remembered his grandmother more vividly now. Her voice had changed in memory. It no longer sounded frail. It sounded certain. "You must be careful with promises," she had once told him while kneading dough in the small kitchen. Some promises listened back. He had laughed, but she hadn't. Now her memory came with the scent of lavender and wood smoke. The sound of her humming old hymns that never quite resolved their melodies. He dreamed of her sitting at the edge of his bed. Not wrong, not decayed, just present. "You opened it," she said gently. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did." Her eyes were not accusing. They were sad. Behind her, the bedroom walls flickered like candlelight against stone. "Am I in danger?" he asked her. She tilted her head. "Child," she said softly, "danger's not the question." He reached for her. She faded into soft smoke. The air smelled briefly of ash as the light and color faded from the room. The next day, Rowan sat beside him at lunch without asking. Elias stiffened. "I found something," Rowan said quietly. Elias's stomach dropped. "About what?" he asked. "About old architecture, under the school." He said nothing. The description she gave him about the old chamber sounded just like the hidden chamber in his attic. Could the two places be connected? Could they both be the same room? Elias was certain of it. Rowan watched his reaction carefully. "You've been down there," Rowan said. Elias's hands trembled under the table. "I don't know what you're talking about." Rowan leaned closer. "I think you're in over your head." The word struck deeper than accusation ever could. Rowan wasn't afraid of him. Rowan was afraid for him. That realization hurt more than Darren's fists ever had. "Rowan," Elias whispered, "if I told you something impossible, would you believe me?" Rowan didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said. The answer landed like a warm hand on a cold shoulder, and that warmth terrified Malphus. Elias felt the demon's presence stir, subtle, coiling. "Careful," Malphus murmured inside him. "Trust dilutes clarity." But Elias didn't pull away from Rowan. Not this time. The dread in the air thickened, not explosive, not dramatic, just steady, like a storm forming far out at sea. That evening, as Elias sat alone in his room, the book opened again without touch. The pages fluttered like lungs drawing breath. Malphus emerged, not as smoke, not as shadow, as something almost human. Almost. "You grow attached," the demon observed. "It's not attachment. It is anchor." Elias met his gaze. "Is that bad?" Malphus smiled, not cruelly, not kindly. "Anchors keep ships from drifting." He paused. "They also keep them from fleeing." Outside the window, the sky darkened prematurely. The clouds did not move naturally. They folded inward toward a central point that no one else seemed to notice. Somewhere in the vastness beyond sight, the colossal being shifted. The prophecy, fractured and incomplete, trembled closer to alignment. And in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, Elias began to understand something terrible. The world was already bending. He just couldn't yet see in which direction. Chapter 7. The Choir Beyond the Bone. Connor Vale had perfected cruelty into ritual. He didn't shout anymore. He didn't shove in hallways like Darren had. Connor had evolved past that. His violence was social, surgical. A raised eyebrow that invited laughter, a whisper that spread like oil, a rumor placed carefully enough that it never traced back to him. He was the kind of boy teachers trusted, the kind that shook hands with visiting parents, the kind who made Elias feel like he was shrinking out of existence. And that was what Elias wanted, to shrink Connor, to make him smaller, to make him gone. He didn't mean dead. He told himself that later. He only meant disappear. It happened in the abandoned stairwell near the boiler room. Connor had followed him there after school, flanked by two silent shadows of boys who laughed when told to. "Didn't think you had anywhere else to be," Connor said lightly. "Figured you live in basements anyway." Elias's pulse thudded behind his eyes. Malphus stirred. "You wish correction?" Elias clenched his jaw. "Just leave me alone." Connor stepped closer. "I don't think I will," the bully said. The air tightened. The stairwell lights flickered, not noticeably, not enough for the others to comment. But Elias felt the world lean inward. "Say it," Malphus whispered. Elias didn't speak aloud. He thought it. "I want him gone." The word echoed. "Gone." Malphus smiled within him. "As you wish." Connor Vale vanished at 3:17 p.m. Security cameras showed him descending the stairwell. They did not show him leaving. The footage distorted for exactly 13 seconds, static crawling across the screen like frost. When the image returned, the stairwell was empty. No struggle, no sound, no body. His two friends swore Connor had been behind them, swore they heard him laugh, swore they turned the corner, and he simply wasn't. Elias knew before the announcements began the next morning. He felt it in the book. It was warm, too warm. The skeletal crown emblem etched into its cover glowed faintly through the fabric of his bag. "You said disappear," Malphus murmured in his mind. "What did you do?" Elie whispered under his breath in class. "I removed him from your concern." "Where is he?" Malphus paused. "Elsewhere." Elias's stomach twisted. The cosmic expanse dragged him down that night without warning. He stood once more upon the black glass plane. This time he was sure it had more cracks, more fractures. The colossal beings were closer now, or perhaps he was deeper. The sky was not sky. It was bone. An endless arch of vertebrae curving overhead, each segment engraved with sigils that pulsed like dying stars. And at the horizon, the bone door. It stood impossibly tall, crafted from interlocking ribs and femurs of something that could not have lived in any known universe. Cracks ran along its surface now, thin fractures, seeping ember light. The crack was wider. He hadn't touched it. "You wish for assistance," Malphus said, materializing beside him in fuller form than ever before. His silhouette was sharper, his crown more defined, skeletal prongs reaching upward like accusations. "I wished for him to disappear." "Yes." Elias stepped toward the bone door. Through the crack, he heard something. Not screaming, but singing. Low, layered. A harmony that vibrated inside his bones. "What is that?" Malphus's expression softened into something like pride. "My generals." The crack pulsed. "Open it further," Malphus urged gently. "You are overwhelmed. The world presses against you. Let us help." Elias hesitated. "I don't trust you." A flicker of something passed through Malphus's eyes. Amusement. "You already do." The colossal beings in the distance shifted, their massive anatomies grinding against one another like tectonic plates. One unfurled limbs that were not limbs, but corridors of screaming constellations. Their attention gathered. They were watching. Not intervening, just watching. "You cannot stand alone against what is coming," Malphus said. "The prophecy fractures. The world decays. You require allies." The singing grew louder. It was beautiful, familiar, and wrong. Elias approached the door. His hand touched the crack. It was warm like living marrow. He pulled. The fracture widened. The bone door split open with a sound like continents breaking. From within spilled not fire, not smoke, but darkness layered upon darkness, shapes woven of shadow and him. They emerged in procession, tall, crowned in iron halos pierced with thorns of light. Their faces were masks of porcelain bone split by too many mouths, each mouth whispering a separate note of the same endless chord. The choir. They descended to the black glass in perfect formation. 7 at first, then more behind them, indistinct. Each carried no weapon. They were the weapon. Their voices braided together into a harmonic pressure that bent the surface of reality. The glass beneath Elias's feet spider-webbed with fractures, revealing beneath it oceans of writhing stars devoured mid-birth. Elias staggered backward. "This isn't help," he breathed. "They are correction," Malphus said reverently. The tallest of the choir stepped forward. Its mask cracked slightly, revealing nothing inside. Not emptiness, but absence. "We answer the herald," it intoned, voice layered in octaves beyond hearing. Elias shook his head. "I didn't ask for this." "You open," it replied. The choir turned their masked faces upward. The colossal beings recoiled. For the first time, Elias saw one retreat in what seemed to be utter fear. The choir's song intensified. Across the void, one of the titans split open along its ribbed spine. From the fissure poured a storm of dying light. The choir sang louder. The titan folded inward and vanished, erased. Elias felt the scale of what he had unleashed. "This is too much," he whispered. Malphus stepped beside him, placing a clawed hand gently on his shoulder. "You wish to be free from harm." Connor's face flickered in Elias's mind. "What did you do to him?" Elias demanded again. Malphus did not answer. Instead, the choir shifted, and Elias saw, in the distance, suspended within a lattice of bone and light, something small, a human shape. Connor, frozen mid-scream, alive, aware, preserved in a prison of cosmic marrow, his existence stretched thin across dimensions like skin over a drum. "You said gone," Malphus said softly. Elias fell to his knees. "You twisted it. I fulfilled it." The demon smirked. The choir's song began to bleed outward from the expanse, into the cracks between worlds, into the fractures beneath the school, into the hidden chamber below stone and dust. Rowan felt it first as a headache, then as a vibration in her teeth. She was in the archive room when the lights dimmed, not flickered, dimmed, as if something immense had passed in front of the sun. The carved script on the hidden chamber walls pulsed faintly. Rowan's flashlight trembled in her grip. The fragment of prophecy she had copied earlier began to smudge on the page, the ink rearranging. "The herald shall open the marrow gate." The words bled, "and the choir shall answer." Rowan's breath hitched, until the sky forgets its shape. Above the school, clouds began spiraling inward toward a point. Birds dropped mid-flight, not dead, just stunned. The air thickened with a low hum that only certain ears could hear. Rowan whispered Elias's name, not in accusation, but in fear. In the expanse, Elias tried to stand. "I don't want this," he said hoarsely. The choir tilted their heads in unison. Their voices softened. "We exist to serve correction." "Not like this," whimpered Elias. "Correction is absolute," they said in complete unison. Malphus knelt before him again. "You fear the scale." "Yes." "You will adjust." Elias looked at the bone gate, now yawning open wide enough to swallow cities. Beyond it, he sensed endless ranks waiting. The choir was only the first movement. "You said helpers," Elias whispered. "They are," Malphus replied. The cosmic expanse shuddered. In the far distance, another colossal being began to fracture. The choir inhaled as one, and Elias understood something terrible. He had not summoned a demon. He had opened a campaign, and the war was not against him. It was for him. Chapter 8. Harmonic Foundations. Connor Vale began to sing on the third night, not with a voice, with pressure. Elias was pulled into the expanse without warning, torn from sleep as if gravity had changed its mind about him. The black glass plain stretched infinite beneath a sky ribbed in bone. The bone gate stood wider now, its fracture no longer a crack, but a gaping wound. And Connor hung at the center of it all. The lattice had grown. Where once bone-light threads wrapped him like a cage, now they extended outward in radiant veins, branching into the void. Each filament pulsed in time with the choir's hymn. Connor's body no longer struggled. He trembled in rhythm. His mouth was open, not in scream, but in a sustained tone. Elias felt it in his teeth, a frequency just beyond hearing. And each time the choir inhaled together, Connor brightened. A tuning fork struck across dimensions. "What did you do?" Elias whispered. Malphus stood beside him, tall and composed, skeletal crown gleaming faintly in reflected void light. "We optimized him." Connor's eyes moved. They found Elias. Recognition flickered. For one terrible second, Elias felt the full stretch of Connor's consciousness, pulled thin across invisible architecture. "I'm so sorry." The thought wasn't spoken. It vibrated. Then the choir sang again, and Connor's apology dissolved into harmonic reinforcement. The bone gate widened another inch. "You said he was gone." "He is," Malphus replied. "Gone from your suffering, present in our structure." The choir's tallest general turned its porcelain mask toward Elias. "We required stabilizing dissonance." The words layered in impossible octaves. Connor's past cruelties. The whispered humiliations, the careful exclusions, the laughter. All of it had become frequency, jagged, useful, perfect for anchoring fractures in reality, said the general. Elias swayed in unsure disgust. "I didn't want this." "You wanted relief," Malphus said. The distinction felt smaller than it should have. Back at school, the world felt wrong, not visibly, subtly, just wrong. Mrs. Hartle, the chemistry teacher, did not show up Monday morning. The substitute claimed illness. By Wednesday, 2 more faculty members were out indefinitely. The intercom crackled more than it spoke. Hallway clocks froze at 3:17 p.m. Students began falling asleep in class. Not normal sleep. Sitting upright, eyes open, humming, low, almost imperceptible. Rowan noticed first. She always did. While others laughed it off, Rowan started mapping anomalies. Dates, times, locations, patterns. Every incident centered around Elias, not because he caused them directly, but because reality bent slightly near him. Animals avoided him. Their dog growled at him now. That's new. The air felt heavier when he entered a room, and Rowan saw the way Elias sometimes paused mid-conversation, listening to something no one else could hear. The sinkhole opened on Friday. Without warning, the football field shuddered, then folded inward like wet paper. Earth collapsed into a widening spiral, devouring bleachers, equipment sheds, and finally a section of the parking lot. No explosion, no seismic activity, just gravity giving up. The hole descended far deeper than it should have, too clean, too circular. At its base, briefly visible before emergency crews cordoned it off, was bone, white structures embedded in soil. Curved, interlocking, too large to belong to anything earthly. Rowan saw Elias staring at it, not horrified, but studying it, as if studying something familiar. And that frightened her more than the collapse itself. That night, Rowan confronted him. Not accusing. Careful. "You're not okay." Elias almost laughed. "I'm fine." "You're not sleeping," Rowan said. "You've been watching me?" Elias said with a sour taste in his mouth. "Yes." The honesty disarmed him. Rowan stepped closer. When Connor disappeared, something changed. Elias felt the choir hum softly inside his skull. He deserved it, Elias said before he realized he meant to. Rowan flinched. Deserve what? Silence. Elias's thoughts were no longer binary. Good and evil had begun to blur, edges softened by Malthus's quiet logic. Correction. Optimization. Efficiency. Words replacing morality. He hurt people, Elias muttered. And now he's gone, Rowan said slowly. And teachers are vanishing. And the ground is swallowing buildings. And you think those are separate things? Elias opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because somewhere deep in the expanse, Connor vibrated brighter. That night, Elias returned willingly. He stood before Connor's lattice, staring at its detail, almost admiring its beauty. The threads now extended beyond sight, weaving into a vast skeletal framework stretching behind the bone gate. The choir hovered in tears. Malthus approached gently. You see it now. Connor no longer looked terrified. His face had smoothed into something eerily serene. The human mind adapts. The harmony had become home. Each pulse of his stretched consciousness stabilized the widening crack. Elias reached toward him. The lattice hummed. The bone gate shuddered. If I pull him free, Elias whispered. What happens? The structure collapses, Malthus said with a frowned face. The colossal beings in the distance stirred uneasily. And then, the gate tears. Elias saw it in a flash. Without Connor's resonance, the fracture would destabilize violently. Not controlled widening, not careful expansion, but rupture. A flood instead of a construction. You build infrastructure, Elias. Now it holds something back as much as it lets something through, the demon murmured. Elias fell to his knees. He hadn't removed a bully. He had poured foundation. Back in the waking world, more students began humming. Phones recorded static layered with faint choral undertones. Audio files corrupted themselves. The sinkhole deepened overnight. Emergency lights flickered in synchronized rhythm. And Rowan found something in the hidden chamber. A corrected fragment. The ink had rearranged. The herald shall supply the marrow. Rowan's hands trembled. This isn't prophecy, she whispered. It's a blueprint. Elias began hearing harmonies in everyday noise. Air conditioning vents, car engines, rain against windows. All of it layered into the choir structure. And sometimes, he felt pride. That was the worst part. Malthus never forced him, never commanded. He simply reframed. See how stable it becomes, Malthus murmured. See how the chaos organizes. Elias watched the bone gate open another inch. He did not stop it. Because somewhere inside him, something had shifted. Connor's cruelty had been wrong. But this was purposeful, efficient, necessary. And Elias no longer knew which word meant good. Rowan stood outside his house that night, watching his bedroom light flicker. She whispered to the dark, I won't let you disappear too. Inside, Elias stared at his reflection. For a moment, just a moment, he saw the faint outline of a skeletal crown hovering above his head, and he did not recoil. The choir inhaled. The bone gate widened, and somewhere beneath the collapsing school grounds, something vast pressed upward against bone. The social world was cracking first. The sky would follow. Chapter 9. Ashes in her wake. The sinkhole began to breathe. At first the town called it settling earth, a natural shift caused by the old mines. Things that could be explained in daylight. But at night, it exhaled. A low, cavernous sound rolled up from its depths. Not wind, not shifting stone. Something rhythmic. Something almost choral. Elias stood at its edge long after the police tape had been abandoned. The perimeter lights flickered behind him, casting uncertain halos across broken asphalt and collapsed homes. The hole was wider tonight. He was certain of it. The air tasted like copper and rain and ash. "Elias?" The voice did not come from behind him. It came from everywhere. He closed his eyes before turning. She stood 3 paces away. "Grandma?" Elias said in a shaky voice. She was not frail, not sickly as she had been in her final days. She stood upright, skin warm with life, hair pinned back neatly, her old gray shawl resting on her shoulders. Her eyes were soft and terribly kind. He couldn't breathe, trembling like a leaf in the wind. "I knew you would come," she said gently. Elias stepped toward her. His throat tightened. "You're where I must be," she answered. He reached for her. His fingers brushed fabric, and she dissolved. Not violently, not theatrically. Just gone. A soft collapse of gray flakes drifting through his hands, smoke unraveling in silent spirals before vanishing into the night air. Elias staggered backward. The sinkhole pulsed with his heartbeat with a familiar throb. And then she stood beside him again, whole, smiling. "You mustn't try to hold me," she said. "You cannot hold what walks between." His heart pounded so hard it hurt. "Between what?" She turned toward the abyss with a gentle gesture downwards. "Between worlds, my sweet boy." The earth below groaned. For a moment. Only a moment. Elias saw something beneath the sinkhole that was not rock. Looking past the mud and dirt, past the unworldly, bone-like protrusions. He saw architecture. Black spires turning slowly, like submerged cathedral towers rotating beneath dark water. He saw shapes moving across them, watching. "You feel it too," she said. He nodded without meaning to. "You were always sensitive," she whispered. "You hear what others refuse to." The town sirens wailed in the distance. Another building had fallen without Elias noticing. Rowan had stopped sleeping. 3 disappearances tonight alone. Not swallowed by the sinkhole. Not crushed, just simply gone. In their places. Fine black residue coating walls and floors, like soot from a fire that had never burned. She crouched in what used to be Mrs. Delaney's kitchen, now laying in complete and utter ruin. Her EM scanner screamed nonsense readings. Magnetic flux spiked and then flattened. The air rippled like heat distortion. The walls bent inward for half a second, then snapped back. Her breath trembled in her chest. "This isn't geological," she muttered. Across town, streetlights hummed in harmonic dissonance. Dogs barked at empty corners. People reported seeing their dead relatives standing calmly in doorways. Always calm, always watching. The hospital lost power at 2:13 a.m. Every monitor displayed the same static waveform with a faint image of a circle, with a sharp skeletal crown at its center. Rowan stared at her tablet. Data scrolled faster than she could interpret. Something was bleeding through, and she had absolutely no idea how to stop it. This wasn't physics misbehaving. This was reality thinning. She stood abruptly. She knew what she had to do. If she couldn't fix it, she could evacuate. She grabbed her uncle's old radio. "Everyone within 5 blocks of the collapse zone needs to relocate. Now, don't argue, just move." Her voice shook, but only once. If she couldn't save the town, she would save who she could. Elias's grandmother walked beside him through streets that felt subtly misaligned. Doors were taller than they should be. Shadows bent toward the sinkhole like iron filings toward a magnet. "They're afraid," Elias said. "Yes," she answered gently. "They think this is evil," she smiled. "Do you?" He hesitated. Another tremor rolled through the ground. A house at the end of the street folded inward with a muffled roar. From its collapsing doorway, 3 figures stepped out calmly. A father, a mother, a child, faces serene. They walked toward the sinkhole without urgency. "They are being called home," Grandmother said softly. "That's not home," Elias whispered. Her expression did not change, but something in her eyes darkened. "Home is not always where you were born," she said. "Sometimes it is where you are needed." He felt the weight of her words settle into him. "You've seen what they've done to this place," she continued. "Greed, waste, noise. They poison everything they touch." A distant shriek split the air. The ground cracked wider. "Correction is not cruelty," she said calmly. "It is balance." Elias swallowed. The sinkhole exhaled again. He felt something respond inside his chest, a resonance, as if the sound belonged to him and as if it came from him. "You are helping restore what was fractured," she told him. "Every step you take, every choice you make, it moves the worlds closer to alignment." "I'm not hurting anyone," he said quickly. "No, of course not my child," she agreed. "You are just opening doors." Her hand brushed his shoulder. He didn't try to grab her this time. He let her presence hover just beyond touch. "You trust me," she said softly. "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Then trust that what feels wrong now will feel necessary later." He nodded, and did not notice how easily he did. The sky split at dawn, not visibly, but perceptibly. Birds fell mid-flight. Cell signals collapsed. For 12 seconds, the town existed in 2 places at once, and Rowan saw it. Standing atop the town's water tower, she watched buildings overlap with impossible silhouettes. Angles too sharp, windows leading nowhere, spires phasing through rooftops like invasive bone growth. The sinkhole was no longer a hole. It was a mouth, and beneath it something vast shifted. She staggered back. "I am in over my head," she whispered to herself with a frightening realization. For the first time, she considered leaving, but then she saw a little boy standing barefoot near the caution tape, staring into the abyss. She did the only thing she knew how. She ran towards him. Grandmother stood closer to the edge now. Her shawl fluttered, though there was no wind. "You hear them singing, don't you?" she asked. He did. It was faint, layered, not human. A harmony too complex for lungs. "They are not monsters," she said. "They are ancient. They were here before fear." Another tremor. The earth cracked at Elias' feet. He stumbled to his knees. She caught him, or seemed to. Her hand passed partly through his arm. For a split second, her face flickered. Not decay, not rot. Something sharper, something crowned, something with too many angles in its smile. Then she was Grandma again. "Soon," she whispered. "Soon what?" Elias questioned. "Soon you will understand your role." He stared at her with a quizzical smile on his face. And somewhere, deep beneath the earth, something vast shifted in approval. Ash drifted around her feet. And for the briefest moment, Elias swore he saw something impossible. Her shadow had wings. Chapter 10. When the sky forgot the sun. The sky did not darken, it fractured. At 3:17 p.m. the next day, the light bent like cracked glass. The sun splintered into shards that hung motionless in the air, refracting into impossible angles. Then, without transition, it was night. Not dusk, not storm, but night. Permanent sky of ebony. The stars above were wrong. They pulsed in arrhythmic clusters, forming patterns that shifted when stared at too long. And from the sinkhole, choir grew louder. Elias and his grandmother stood within the widening rim of the bone gate. The asphalt around the sinkhole had peeled back entirely now. What remained was no longer earth. It was rib. Enormous curved arches of pale bone erupted upward from the depths, forming a cathedral of skeletal spines. Between them shimmered a membrane of thin, wet light, stretched like skin across a scar on the face of the world. Elias trembled, but not from fear, from awe. "You see now," Grandmother whispered, her voice layered. Something beneath it, humming in harmony. "This is not destruction. It is unveiling." The town screamed behind him. He did not turn. "But they suffer," he said quietly. "No, my boy." "They resist," she corrected gently. "Resistance feels like suffering when one clings to decay." A building nearby collapsed inward as something crawled out of the fractures. Small, twisted silhouettes with too many joints and mouths that opened sideways. Their bodies were of sinew and shadow, bone and tendon, stretched thin like unfinished sketches of living things that should not be. They moved in packs. They did not roar. They clicked. A horrible, eager sound that haunted one's very soul. Elias flinched as one skittered past him, ignoring him entirely. "They will cleanse," Grandmother said softly. A woman ran across the street, screaming, clutching her child. One of the creatures leapt in her direction. The scream ended wetly and abruptly. All that was left was the sound of the baby being carried off towards the massive hole in the ground. The infant's cries grew distant and stopped with an abrupt thud. Elias staggered backward. "This isn't—" "It is necessary," she said, stepping closer, putting a comforting hand on his upper back. Her eyes were warmer than they had ever been in life. "You asked why the world felt wrong, why you always sensed something beneath it. This is why." The membrane of the bone gate pulsed. "Open it wider," she whispered. He shook his head weakly. The clicking multiplied. Windows shattered. Flesh tore. The town dissolved into chaos. "Look at them," she urged. He did, and he saw not horror, but inevitability. The dead had begun to walk, those crushed in their homes, those swallowed by the first collapse. They emerged from doorways and alleyways coated in fine gray ash. Their wounds were gone. Their expressions were serene. For the lack of a better word, Elias thought they looked happy. They moved as one, toward the gate, toward the choir. "They understand," Grandmother said. The dead townsfolk reached the rim of the abyss. One by one, they stepped forward and fell. No screams, just surrender. Elias' heart pounded. "They are giving themselves to rebirth." The bone gate widened another inch. The creatures shrieked in delight. "Open it," she breathed. Her hand hovered over his chest. "Your voice is the key." And somewhere inside him, something ancient answered. It was not a rescue operation anymore. It was evacuation. The creatures, she refused to call them demons, tore through the streets in hunting clusters like packs of wild dogs. They avoided Elias entirely. They avoided the dead entirely. They only attacked the living. The sky above rippled like fabric stretched too thin. Rowan dragged a bleeding man into the back of a police cruiser. She slammed the door as one of the creatures smashed into the side of the vehicle, jaws snapping through metal like paper. "Drive!" she shouted. The car fishtailed through debris. The ancient church stood on the hill at the edge of town. Older than the maps claimed, built from dark stone that predated the modern grid. Rowan had always dismissed the rumors about it, but not tonight. The creatures slowed as they approached its steps. They hissed in pained disapproval. They did not cross the threshold. Rowan stared at the heavy wooden doors. Symbols were carved along the frame. Not Christian, but older, much older. Interlocking circles pierced by vertical lines. She shoved survivors inside. 23 people. Children sobbing, adults shaking. One woman still whispering prayers to a god that no longer answered. The stained glass windows had begun to fracture. Not break. Just fracture. As though something on the other side pressed against them from within the image itself. Rowan turned back toward the town below. The dead walked in lines now, hundreds of them. Calm, peaceful, serene. Walking into the bone gate like parishioners into Sunday service. "What have you done, Elias?" she whispered. And for the first time in her life, she felt small. The choir crescendoed. It was both beautiful and terrible at the same time. Layer upon layer of inhuman harmony vibrating through bone and blood. The sky tore wider. Through it, Elias saw the other world fully now. Not fire, not brimstone, but architecture grown from bone and obsidian. Towers spiraled upward into a sky of swirling void. Rivers of black light flowed between structures, shaped like cathedral ribs and inverted thrones. And something vast moved within it, watching, waiting. Grandmother's voice dropped lower. "You are not destroying your town," she said. "You are elevating it." The membrane thinned to transparency. The minor creatures multiplied, crawling through in droves now, no longer testing the boundary, but flooding it. "They are the first choir," she whispered. The lesser voices. Elias felt something shift inside his mind, a realization he did not want to touch. "Why me?" he asked. Her smile deepened. "Because you listen." For a split second, her face flickered again. The warmth vanished. Behind her skin, something horned and angular leaned forward, eyes like collapsed stars, a crown of black spines. But it was gone before he could focus. "Open it fully," she urged. Below him, the last of the dead stepped into the abyss. The gate widened, and the sky above the town cracked like porcelain. From the fracture, enormous silhouettes began to press against reality's thinning veil. Not yet entering, but testing. The choir was no longer distant. It was everywhere. And Elias lifted his hands. Chapter 11. The Cathedral of Ash and Bone. The church did not tremble. Everything around it did. The town had become a geometry problem, solved incorrectly. Streets bent at impossible angles. Houses sagged into themselves as though gravity had grown selective. The sky above churned in layered fractures with black upon black. And through those cracks, something massive shifted, like a sleeper turning in its grave. But the church remained still, untouched. The creatures gathered at its perimeter in twitching clusters, their bodies flexing with irritated clicks. They pressed clawed limbs against the invisible threshold and recoiled as though burned. They could not cross. Rowan stood in the nave, staring at the doors. 23 survivors huddled in the pews. The air smelled of wax and old stone. Solid, grounding, real. No distortion. No flicker. Outside, something screamed that did not possess lungs. Inside, the candles burned straight. "Why you?" Rowan whispered to the building. "What makes you different?" She moved toward the altar. The carved symbols she'd seen on the doorframe were repeated here. Interlocking circles pierced by vertical lines, but now she noticed something else. Faint inscriptions spiraling along the stone columns, worn nearly smooth by time. She brushed ash from one. Letters emerged. Not Latin. Not anything modern. She pulled her tablet, hands shaking, cross-referencing pattern structures. The language predated organized scripture. Older than the town. Older than the country. Her stomach dropped. The church wasn't Christian. It had been repurposed, built upon something far older. She descended behind the altar and found the trapdoor. It opened with a groan that sounded like relief. Below lay a chamber, untouched by dust. At its center stood a circular stone table carved with the same sigil, but here it pulsed faintly with pale light, and etched into the surrounding walls were figures, tall, cloaked in radiance, faces obscured by halos of branching light. Beneath them, an inscription translated slowly on her screen. The Lumanarch Covenant. Rowan breathed the name aloud. The Lumanarch Covenant. Ancient protectors of the veil, keepers of thresholds, architects of resistance, she read. The chamber walls depicted a gate, skeletal, immense, and beneath it a crowned figure of horn and shadow. Malphus, it has to be, she thought to herself. Opposite the crowned figure stood one of the Lumanarch, holding not a weapon, but a tuning fork made of light. Another inscription flared faintly as her hand hovered over the table. The gate opens by resonance. It closes by severance. Her pulse quickened. Severance. The word echoed in her mind. There was a way to cut the harmony, to silence the choir, but it would require alignment from within the gate itself. Rowan's hope flickered. Fragile, dangerous. Above her, something colossal shifted. Stone dust drifted from the ceiling. The bone gate widened with a sound like ribs snapping open. The membrane thinned until it became nearly invisible, a trembling boundary between realities. And then it emerged. Not fully, but enough. The throne descended first. It did not fall. It phased downward, as though remembered into existence. Massive, carved from interlocked femurs and blackened vertebrae, fused into spiraling architecture. The armrests were formed from elongated skulls with hollowed eyes that wept slow trails of dark vapor. Behind it hovered the crown, a vast skeletal diadem composed of curved, barbed horns fused at impossible angles, orbiting a central void. It rotated slowly, grinding against the air with a metallic groan that had no source. The choir shifted pitch, lower, slower, anticipatory. Elias stared upward in awe. Above the fractured sky, the colossal beings pressed further through. They were not singular entities, but aggregations of shape and suggestion. Limbs like cathedral spires, torsos composed of interwoven rib cages miles long, skin stretched taut over moving constellations of eyes. Their heads scraped against the torn firmament. Their mouths did not open. Their presence did all the screaming. One leaned partially into the world. Its spine dragged across the clouds, peeling night backward like fabric. From its chest cavity dangled chains of vertebrae that clattered against rooftops below, collapsing buildings simply by brushing them. Another unfolded, jointed appendages tipped with grasping, finger-like mandibles that flexed hungrily in the air. They did not descend fully. Not yet. But gravity had begun to bend toward them. Elias, once again, felt small but chosen. Grandmother stood beside the throne. Her smile was serene. "Do you see?" she whispered. "This was always yours." His reflection shimmered faintly in the polished bone. He stepped closer. Each footfall caused the gate to widen a fraction more. Behind him, the minor demons multiplied, swarming through widening fractures in reality. Each screaming from all points of the town towards the throne. Their screeches echoed like applause. "You are not destroying," she said softly. "You are correcting." He reached the base of the throne. His hands trembled. "I'm not like them." "No, my child," she agreed. "You are above them." Her voice layered again. something ancient surfacing beneath the warmth. "Take your seat, Elias." He hesitated. Below, the last remnants of the town burned in unnatural light. The dead were gone, all offered, all consumed. The colossal beings leaned closer. The crown rotated faster. "Sit," she urged. So, without hesitation, he did. The moment his body touched the throne, the choir detonated into a deafening harmony. The gate split wider. Elias gasped. Pain lanced through his spine. His fingers elongated slightly. Subtle at first. The nails darkened, thickened. His vision sharpened unnaturally. He could see the layers of reality now, overlapping transparencies of two worlds grinding together. His shadow no longer matched his shape. Behind him, wings flickered, skeletal frameworks forming and dissolving in erratic pulses. His grandmother watched with pride. "You feel it?" she whispered. "Yes, I think I do," he breathed. It felt powerful. It felt righteous. Above him, the crown lowered a fraction, not touching, but waiting. With every creature that crawled through the gate, his bones grew heavier. With every building that collapsed beneath the colossal entities passing, his pupils thinned into vertical slits. With every act of correction, the membrane dissolved further. And far beneath the illusion, something else watched from behind his grandmother's eyes. It was patient. It was amused. The transformation had begun. Not abrupt, not grotesque, but inevitable. Elias flexed his fingers. Bone creaked beneath skin. The throne responded. And the sky above the town tore wider still. The chamber trembled violently now. Dust rained from the ceiling. Rowan stared at the glowing sigil. "Severance requires opposition within the gate," she whispered. Her heart sank. "Elias." She looked upward as a shadow the size of a mountain passed over the church roof. Something enormous brushed against the steeple. The bell rang once, a deep, resonant tone that vibrated through stone. For a fraction of a second, the colossal being recoiled. The Lumanarch sigil flared brighter than before. Rowan's breath tightened in her chest. Sound, resonance, counter-harmony. Hope flickered stronger now. Above her, the sky groaned as skeletal architecture forced itself further into existence. And somewhere in the center of town, Elias sat upon a throne not meant for mortal flesh. The crown descended slowly toward him. Not yet placed, but coming. And the world, trembling at its seams, began to understand that it was no longer alone. Chapter 12. The Crown of Severed Names. The throne tightened around him. Not physically, conceptually. Bone reshaped to fit his spine as if remembering him. Elias inhaled, and the air bent toward his lungs. The choir no longer sounded distant. It resonated within his ribs. Each note thrummed against marrow. The colossal beings pressing through the fractured sky paused, not in fear, but in pure recognition. Grandmother stood before him, her shawl unmoving in the gravity-warped air. "You are nearly whole," she said softly. Elias tried to answer. His voice sounded fractured, as if in two tones emerged, one his own, the other deeper, layered, vast, grinding like massive tectonic plates shifting beneath an ocean floor. "I feel different." "You are remembering," she corrected. The skeletal crown descended. Closer, closer. The minor demons below shrieked in euphoric agitation. Buildings tore apart as the massive entities shifted their weight into the town. One colossal being drove a limb into the earth, and the ground ruptured in concentric rings for miles. The gate widened again, and Elias' bones answered. His shoulders split with a sound like tearing canvas. Not flesh, it was framework. Skeletal protrusions forced outward beneath his skin, forming the early architecture of wings. His spine lengthened subtly, vertebrae stacking, rearranging. His fingers extended another inch. The nails blackened fully. His eyes burned. He saw through things now. Through walls, through matter, through the thinning veil itself. He saw the choir, not a sound, a structure, an interlocking lattice of harmonic command. And at its center, Malphus. The true one. Not the illusion, not the warmth. A vast, crowned intelligence woven into the choir's core like a conductor embedded in its symphony. Grandmother stepped closer. The illusion flickered. Her skin rippled like disturbed water. The choir reached an impossible crescendo. The crown touched his head and did not rest. It pierced. Barbs of bone slid into his scalp. Not cutting, but painfully merging. Elias screamed, but the scream became harmony. His mouth opened wider than it should, his jaw unhinged with elegant precision as the crown fused downward. Skeletal filaments threading through skull and brain stem. His vision went white. The town below imploded in silence as reality buckled inward. The colossal beings roared without sound. And then, stillness. The crown locked into place. It was no longer separate. It was his skull, antlered, spiked, regal, and horrific. Veins of black light pulsed from it across his temples. The illusion shattered. Elias's grandmother dissolved not into ash, but into shadow. And behind her, filling the expanse between stars, Malphus had revealed himself. Not horned as Elias had imagined, not winged. He was architecture. He was structure. A cathedral of bone and void stretching beyond dimension. His face, a shifting arrangement of crowned skulls orbiting a core of gravitational darkness. His voice was the choir, and it spoke through Elias. "You have done well." Elias felt the words exit his own mouth, but they were not his. The realization came like cold iron. You used me." Malphus' laughter was not sound, but gravitational distortion. "I refined you." Elias felt the truth then. Every whisper, every comfort, every reassurance, calculated. He tried to rise from the throne. It resisted. Malphus's presence faltered slightly. A tremor rippled through the cosmic expanse as Elias strengthened Malphus thin. The crown had not merely crowned him, it had tethered him. Two consciousnesses now braided together. With every breath Elias took, Malphus diminished by a fraction. A dangerous miscalculation. "You are a vessel," Malphus intoned. Elias' wings burst fully from his back. Skeletal framework spanning outward, draped in membrane of black starlight. "I am more than vessel," Elias answered in a newfound voice, deep and overconfident. And this time, the deeper voice harmonized with his own. The gate flared violently. The colossal beings hesitated. Something new had entered the hierarchy. Rowan felt it. The moment the crown fused, the Lumanarch sigil beneath the church flared so brightly it burned after images into her vision. She staggered in the chamber below the altar. The tuning fork of light depicted on the wall began to glow. Then the glow shifted. It moved toward her. She gasped as the light threaded into her chest. Not painfully, but definitively. Her memories rearranged, not erased, expanded. She saw the Lumanarch Covenant not as myth, but as predecessors. They had never wielded the tuning fork. They had been it. Resonant beings capable of counter-harmonic correction. Human, chosen, aligned. The realization hollowed her. "I'm the Severin," she whispered. The stone table pulsed in agreement. Images flooded her mind. The choir as waveform. The gate as frequency distortion. Malphus as conductor. To close the gate required realignment from inside the harmonic lattice. Inside the cosmic expanse. Inside the choir. Her breath trembled. I have to go in. Above her, the church groaned as one of the colossal beings dragged a limb across its outer wall, testing its fortitude. The bell rang again. The creature recoiled once more. The sigil brightened. The path would not open from here. She needed proximity. She needed access to the gate itself. And then a flicker. Through the veil, she saw him, Connor, suspended within the choir's structure, his body integrated into the harmonic lattice. Not dead, not alive. His presence was anchoring a section of the resonance unintentionally, holding a note that did not belong. Rowan's heart shattered. He's part of it. Understanding dawned with sick clarity. To realign the choir, someone had to take his place. She swallowed hard. Not yet, she whispered. First, she had to reach the expanse. Above ground, Elias rose from the throne. Not fully Malphus, yet not fully Elias. Something in between. The crown gleamed. His shadow now had depth. And when he spoke, the sky answered. The veil thinned further. And Rowan climbed from the chamber with a new terror settling into her bones. She would have to walk straight into hell and sing. Chapter 13. When the choir broke. The crossing was not a doorway, it was subtraction from reality itself. Rowan did not step into the cosmic expanse. The world peeled away from her. The church, the survivors, the burning town. All gone. Sound evaporated first, then gravity, then direction. She floated in a black so vast, it seemed to swallow the idea of distance. The cosmic expanse was not empty. It was crowded. Shapes that shifted in the darkness, colossal anatomies folding in upon themselves, creatures composed of spiraled vertebrae and membranous sails drifting like drowned mountains. Eyes opened and closed in the vacuum, not blinking, but rotating inward like aperture shutters. Some entities were stretched so thin they resembled fractures in reality rather than beings. Others pulsed like exposed hearts the size of continents. There was no ground, nor was there sky. Only depth layered over depth. The choir was visible here, not a sound, but a structure. A web of harmonic threads woven through the void, each filament vibrating in perfect, terrible synchronization. Rowan's mind buckled. Her thoughts fragmented into disjointed impressions. It's all too big, too wrong, too much. A massive organism rotated past her. Its body a looping Mobius strip of ribcage and sinew, its interior lined with faces that mouthed silent prayers backward. Something brushed against her mind. It was not malicious, only curious. She screamed, silently. The expanse answered by showing her more. She saw the town from above, burning, devoured by swarming minor demons. Winged creatures, with elongated limbs and wings stitched from flayed dimension, glided through to the air, trailing black vapor in their wake. Colossal beings had fully manifested now, their legs impaling the earth like spires. One leaned over the ocean, siphoning water upward into its ribcage as if drinking the sea. Reality was failing. Her sanity tilted with it. The choir's resonance vibrated through her skull. It tried to absorb her, to fold her into its geometry. For one terrible second, she almost let it. It would be easier to just dissolve, to stop resisting. Then she saw him, a familiar shape in the distance, a human shape. It was Connor, suspended at the lattice's center, stretched thin across harmonic filaments. His eyes were open, but unfocused. his mouth slightly parted. His body was not pierced. It was threaded. He was a tuning fork, a living anchor. His suffering was not screaming. It was a sustained note beyond the range for normal ears. Rage snapped her back together. No, she pushed forward. The expanse resisted like thick oil. Creatures turned toward her. The colossal beings in the overworld paused. They felt her. Rowan reached Connor and grasped his arm, but her hand phased halfway through him. He vibrated. The lattice tightened. The choir shifted pitch violently. She pulled harder. Threads of black resonance snapped against her forearms, burning with freezing pain. Connor convulsed, his consciousness flickering. "I won't leave you here," she shouted at him. She tore at the harmonic strands again. One snapped. The choir shrieked across dimensions. In the overworld, a colossal entity stumbled, collapsing into a row of buildings. But 3 more threads replaced the one she broke. The lattice was self-healing. This wasn't enough. She couldn't rip him free by force. The choir wasn't held together by tension. It was held together by conductor. And the conductor was Elias. A tremor rolled through the expanse. He arrived not by movement, but by declaration. The space around him folded into a throne of blackened light. He no longer resembled a boy. His body elongated, wrapped in plated bone armor grown from his own skeleton. Wings vast and imposing unfurled behind him, membrane rippling with trapped starlight. His crown fused seamlessly into his skull, horns spiraling outward in barbed majesty. His eyes burned with abyssal fire. When he spoke, the choir bent. "Rowan?" The voice was layered and resonant. "Not Elias. Not entirely. You should not have come." The expanse darkened further as he drew power from the choir. In the overworld, demons multiplied instantly. Clawed masses pouring through widening fractures. Winged horrors shrieked across the sky. The monolithic beings straightened fully, their bodies scraping against the very heavens themselves. The town was gone, replaced by infernal architecture growing from ruptured earth. Rowan felt the Lumanarch power awaken inside her. It felt warm, brilliant, opposite to Elias. Light bloomed from her chest, not blinding but precise. Geometric sigils formed around her body, spirals of radiant script orbiting her like armor. The creatures recoiled. The expanse did not like light. She turned back to Connor. "I can't pull you out," she whispered. His eyes flickered toward her for the first time. One tear drifted free and crystallized into harmonic glass. Understanding hit her. She didn't have to remove Connor to save him. She had to replace him. The Lumanarch Covenant's memory surged inside her. The tuning fork was not a weapon that was held. It was a position that was occupied. She pressed her forehead to Connor's. "Go home," she whispered. Light erupted. She drove the Lumanarch resonance outward, not tearing the lattice, but rethreading it. Connor's body fell backward, released, drifting away as the harmonic strands latched onto her instead. Pain detonated through her spine. The choir screamed in resistance. She did not fight it. She aligned with it. Her mind stretched across all dimensions, touching every filament, every vibration in existence. She became counter-harmony, and in that moment, she felt every living thing that ever was and ever would be. The black choir faltered. In the overworld, one colossal being split down the center and collapsed into ash. Elias roared in anger. He drew deeper from the choir, draining entire harmonic layers to fuel himself. Demons in the overworld withered instantly as their energy siphoned into him. He grew larger, more defined, more absolute. "You are weakening them," he accused. "I'm saving them," she answered. They collided. His demonic force crashed against her radiant lattice. Waves of anti-structure tore through the expanse. Entire grotesque organisms disintegrated in the crossfire. He summoned spears of condensed choir resonance and hurled them at her. She countered with arcs of luminous severance that unraveled them mid-flight. Each time he pulled power from the choir, its members shriveled to near death. Each time she radiated Lumanarch energy, the lattice destabilized. The expanse trembled. Below them, the gate fluctuated violently. The battle became symphonic. His darkness sought dominance. Her light sought balance. He lunged forward, wings slicing through the void, crown blazing. She answered with a surge of harmonic inversion that forced him back. For one flicker of a moment, she saw him. Not Malphas. Elias. He was there, just buried deep inside this demonic carapace. Afraid. Then it vanished beneath demonic certainty. "I am inevitability," he thundered. "You were manipulated. Why can't you see that?" "I know you're in there, Elias," she replied. The expanse cracked around them. The overworld burned beneath. The choir teetered between annihilation and rebirth. And neither realized the gate was closer to shattering completely than either of them intended. Chapter 14. The silence after the song. The expanse tore itself apart around them. Elias descended like a falling god. Rowan barely raised her lattice of light before his claws. No longer metaphor, but manifestation. Split through it. His wings eclipsed constellations. His crown burned with choir-fueled fury. "You cannot unmake what I have become," he said with a booming voice. He struck. The impact shattered harmonic space. Rowan's luminous sigils ruptured outward in fragments. She felt ribs crack. Not of flesh, but frequency. The Lumanarch resonance flickered violently within her. She pushed back, but he was drawing from everything now. Every remaining filament of the black choir fed into him. The lattice dimmed. The grotesque entities drifting in the void withered as their sustaining harmony was siphoned away. They folded inward like punctured lungs. He became colossal, overwhelming, absolute. In the overworld, the demons roared in triumph as their king towered in blazing, skeletal majesty below the burning ruin of the town. Rowan faltered. For one heartbeat, she doubted. That was enough. That was all he needed. Elias moved faster than thought. His hand pierced through her chest, not tearing flesh, but shattering lights. The Lumanarch resonance sputtered. Her eyes widened. He lifted her up above his head, her weakened body suspended in the void between them. The choir screamed with approval. "I will end this," he said, voice now fully demonic, layered with ancient command. And he closed his fist as fire and embers engulfed her body. Rowan shattered. Her body dissolved into fragments of radiant ash that scattered into the expanse like dying stars. Silence fell. Elias smiled at his handiwork. The expanse steadied. Elias hovered alone. The crown pulsed triumphantly. The overworld burned brighter. Then, a single spark remained. Where Rowan had fallen, one shard of light refused to dim. It pulsed once, then twice, then exploded in a burst of radiant light energy. The Luminarch Covenant answered. Not from outside, but from memory. From history, from every protector who had ever stood against the dark. Spirits of luminous warriors emerged in spiraling ascent. Translucent forms clad in radiant geometries, their bodies composed of harmonic precision and brilliant defiance. They surrounded the spark, chanting as they poured brilliant light into it. Then, in a bright, hot flash, Rowan returned. Not reborn in flesh, but reforged in resonance. Her form blazed with layered light, dozens of spectral Lumanarch presences orbiting within her like a living constellation. Her eyes shone white-hot. Elias staggered backward. Impossible. He shrieked in agitation. She extended her arms. The expanse shifted key. Not louder. Different. The frequency changed. The black choir, already weakened by Elias' desperate siphoning, faltered catastrophically. The harmonic web snapped, thread by thread, scream by scream. As Rowan amplified the Lumanarch surge, Elias panicked. He did the only thing he could. He drained it all, every remaining filament, every sustaining note. He ripped the choir into himself entirely. The expanse imploded inward. Creatures collapsed into dust. The lattice disintegrated. The black choir died, and in killing it, he severed his own foundation. The crown cracked down the center with a deafening fracture. Across dimensions, the overworld convulsed. Demons froze mid-rampage. Winged horrors faltered mid-flight. The colossal beings shrieked, their immense bodies unraveling as their sustaining resonance evaporated. The sky stitched itself together in violent spasms. Rowan raised her hands higher. The Lumanarch spirits joined their voices. Not sound, but alignment. The bone gate screamed in resistance as its structure destabilized. Rowan stepped forward through collapsing void and pressed her palm against the gate's skeletal arch. "Be closed," she said in a gentle tone. Light surged from the gate. Not explosive, not violent, just precise. The fissures in reality sealed like cauterized wounds. The sinkhole in the overworld roared as gravitational forces reversed, dragging every demon, every towering abomination, every hell-grown structure back into its depths. The titanic beings were pulled downward, their massive limbs scraping across the earth as they were swallowed whole. Infernal architecture crumbled into ash mid-air. The sky healed. The sinkhole sealed shut. Silence reclaimed the world. In the cosmic expanse, only Elias remained. Small now, thin and very frail. The power he had once stolen, now gone. The choir gone. Malphus gone. His demonic form collapsed inward. Bone plates retracting, wings shriveling into skeletal remnants. The crown, shattered, did not fall. It fused backward into the throne behind him. Its broken horns locked into the bone architecture, rooting him there. He tried to stand. He could not. The throne tightened. What was once a seat of dominion is now a prison. Rowan approached him, her luminous form dimming slowly as the Lumanarch spirits withdrew one by one, their purpose fulfilled. He looked at her, for the first time in chapters. His eyes were Elias. "I didn't mean to," he whispered. The expanse was quiet now, empty. No choir, no conductor, no harmony, just echo. "You became what it needed," Rowan said softly. He glanced upward at the broken crown embedded above him. "I killed it, didn't I? They're all dead cause of me." "Yes," his voice trembled. "And myself." The throne sealed fully, bone encasing his lower body like fossilized roots. Rowan's light faded to a human glow. The gate was closed. The worlds were separate again. But Elias remained. Bound, suspended in the silent cosmic expanse. Not king, not demon, not boy. A remnant. A warning. The last of the Lumanarch light flickered out around Rowan. And for the first time since the choir began, the universe was quiet. Chapter 15. The quiet between kings. The cosmic expanse no longer sang. It breathed. Slow, hollow, vast. Where once the black choir had woven impossible architecture, there was now absence. A silence so complete it felt like pressure against the mind. At its center sat Elias. Not king, not boy, something in between. The throne had grown around him fully now, rib-like arches curving upward and locking over his shoulders. The broken crown hung fused into its structure, split down the center, its jagged halves embedded into bone like a fossilized halo. He was thin, almost translucent. The colossal grandeur was gone. The wings on his back were almost non-existent. Now the horns no longer spiraled outward. Only faint ridges remained beneath pale skin. But deep within his chest, a spark. Small, red, breathing. He felt it. The last fragment of demonic power he had stolen when he drained the choir. It was not enough to rise. Not enough to break the throne. But it was enough to see. And he saw Rowan. She stood alone in the expanse, light dimmed, human again. The gate was sealed. The path home was gone. Her shoulders trembled. Not from fear, but from the weight of understanding the situation she was in. She had saved the world and stranded herself. Elias closed his eyes. He could feel the overworld now, distant, muffled, but alive. The earth no longer screamed. The sky was no longer fractured. 23 survivors waited in the ruins of a town that no longer burned. Rowan would never reach them. Not without a gate. Not without power. The spark within him flickered. He laughed once. Softly. Weak. Still correcting, he whispered to himself. The throne tightened slightly in warning. He ignored it. Gathering the last of his strength, he reached inward. Not to the crown, not to the expanse, but to that ember buried in his core. It hurt. Like tearing off the last piece of himself. He shaped it carefully. Not as destruction, not as dominion, as direction. Rowan looked up as the void in front of her folded into a thin, trembling line of red light. Her breath tightened in her chest. "Elias?" she said in confusion. The line widened just enough for one body. On the throne, Elias felt the prison react violently. Bone creaked. The broken crown pulsed in agitation. He pushed anyway. "For once," he murmured, voice barely audible in the vastness. "I choose." The spark burned out. The red line snapped shut. And Rowan was gone. Back in the overworld, Rowan fell onto cracked asphalt beneath a pale morning sky. For a long moment, she simply lay there, staring upward. Blue. Clouds. Sunlight. No fractures. No wings tearing through atmosphere. No choir. The town was in ruins. Collapsed buildings, scorched foundations, streets buckled and scarred by something no one would ever fully understand. But it was quiet. She stood slowly. The church still stood. Sure, it was blackened and cracked, but it was standing. The doors opened before she reached them. 23 faces stared back at her. Fearful, hopeful. She stepped inside. "It's over," she said. "It's all finally over." Her voice wavered only once. "The demons are gone. The sky is healed. The gate is closed." Silence fell on the church. Then a child began to cry, not from fear, from relief. Rowan moved among them, grounding them with touch, with words, with the steady presence she had fought to become. Over the following days, she led them away from the ruins, away from the scar in the earth where the sinkhole had been. They traveled beyond the town's edge, past forests that had begun quietly reclaiming damaged soil. They would build again, just not here, somewhere new. The younger survivors walked closest to her. They looked at her not as warrior, but as guide, and she accepted that weight despite her age of only 16. Sometimes, when the wind shifted just right, she swore she felt a tremor beneath reality. Not threatening, Not loud, just distant. Waiting. Deep in the cosmic expanse, silence remained. The throne stood alone now in a void stripped of its former horror. But silence, like sound, is not permanent. Within the prison of bone, Elias did not move. His body had grown smaller, thinner, almost fetal. The throne's architecture curled tighter around him, ribs folding inward and closing. The broken crown hung above like a shattered moon. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, a faint click. One fractured prong of the crown shifted. Barely. The crack along its center line narrowed by the width of a breath. Deep within the throne's cocoon, something pulsed. Not red this time. Black. And patient. The expanse inhaled. Somewhere in that infinite dark, a single harmonic vibration trembled into existence. Not a choir. Not yet. Just a note. Small. Uncertain. Beginning. And within his incubation of bone and silence, Elias slept. The end. For now,